Let's face it, there's a lot going on in the world right now, and it's really hard just keeping track of America alone. So, in case you missed it, I got together with a good friend of mine from the Democratic Republic of Congo. He's a senior studying architecture here at UC Berkeley, so give him a wave if you see him. His name is Dio, and here's what's going on in his home country. I hope you enjoy this podcast. This is the Bare Minds Podcast. Let's just talk about the facts of what's going on.
Yeah.
In Congo, there was supposed to be an election. We talked about it last time.
Yeah.
In December, right?
December 2016. Yes.
2016. Now it's June 2017.
Mm-hmm.
Election still hasn't happened. The opposition party leader has died of old age, as far as we know.
Yeah.
What does that mean? I mean, like, how does the country move forward at this point?
Yeah, so I think like since the death of Étienne Tshisekedi, I think things have been a little bit more disturbed.
And Étienne Tshisekedi is the
opposition party leader. So as you know, like Étienne Tshisekedi used to be like one of the greatest opposition leader in the country, because he's been opposing the people in power for a very long time, since the Mobutu time. And even when Kabila came into power, he was always kind of challenging him. And obviously, he was known to many people in the DR Congo. So he was very popular and a very influential guy. And because of that, so his death kind of, I won't say destroyed the opposition, but it makes it a little bit less influential. So since his death, so his political party itself has started to kind of subdivide, and they're starting to diverge in their opinions, and they're not as unified as they used to be under his leadership.
So what was the party that he was leading?
He was president of the UDPS. UDPS.
How do you spell it?
UDPS.
UDPS.
Yeah.
What does this?
I'm not exactly sure, but we can.
And Kabila is which
Kabila
party?
is so normally when he became there was a party called PPRD, and I think the party is still there today, but there is a movement so for the majority, so la majorité présidentielle, that's how we call it. So that's kind of where it belongs. So there's like many political parties that came together to support the president of the country.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's like the main big party that's control the Senate, the Parliament, and pretty much everything else in the country.
I'm glad you brought up the Senate.
Mm-hmm.
How, like you told me, someone told me that the Senate has grown exponentially in the last few months, right?
So the government has grown more. Yeah, so because like since we've been having discussions about the elections and they wanted to find a deal, we've been switching ministers. I think this is the second that we've switched since we started, like since the parties that had interest in that like started to talk, on how they could actually lead us to peaceful elections. So we had one first prime minister. I think it was Sami Badibanga. He was prime minister for a very short time, and then after that, we got a new prime minister who is actually from the party of Étienne Tshisekedi. Yeah. So many people believe that under his leadership, for instance, that individual will have never joined the government of Kabila without them getting to kind of agreements on the elections, Yeah, but now that Étienne Tshisekedi has died, so they don't really have a clear leader. So
is there another party that could potentially?
The biggest other opposition party at the time, I think, is the J7, and this is like it's a party that was kind of formed, or I would say like a coalition that was formed. So close to when we were supposed to have the election, and that coalition actually kind of includes different opposition leaders that kind of came together, and also people used to be in the majority, so they all came together and formed a party to kind of challenge the power in place.
To challenge the Kabila.
Kabila institution. Yeah, and that movement, I think, if I'm not mistaken, that they're supporting Moise Katumbi, who is like the person they're pushing forward. Yeah, but as I said last time, well, I don't know if I mentioned it last time, but so after we started hearing that we wouldn't have elections, there were some kind of conflict between the Katanga government and Kinshasa, and the Katanga government was led by Moise Katumbi, and he was kind of in disaccord with the president regarding the elections. So he also left the majority and joined the opposition, and now is being pushed as the front runner for the 2017 elections if we do have elections in 2017.
What are the odds of that, and who's in charge of trying to make that happen? Is there an institution?
So the institution in charge of the elections is called the CENI, which stands for Commission Électorale Indépendante, or Independent Electoral Commission. Yeah, if I was trying to translate it into English. Yeah, so that commission is supposed to be an independent commission that actually takes care of the elections. So what they do is that they go and make sure that every citizen is registered and above 18 to vote for the elections. So actually that was one of the arguments as of why we didn't organize elections in 2016. Because according to that commission, they needed to count everyone that turned 18 since the last election. So they had to go in all the different provinces and recount the people. And of course, they also mentioned some budget issues, saying that they didn't have enough funds to actually get to do their job.
This is that commission?
Yeah, that commission, yeah.
And the government didn't say it officially, or the Kabila administration didn't say it officially, right?
No, they didn't say it officially because there's, the belief is that the commission I was talking about is independent, so that's what is said by government people, that it doesn't have direct ties with the Kabila administration. Yeah, at least that is the common belief.
So what's going on in Congo right now?
So right now, there is a different set of issues. So lately, there've been a lot of trouble in Kasai province. Because there's like a group of called rebels, that's apparently going against the government, and people think, at least according to rumors, is that these insurgencies related to the elections. So the leader of that of a village was killed, and then his people went against the government. So they started fighting against government, and I guess the tragedy here, and also the thing that has been going over the internet, is the video that was shot by one Congolese soldiers, where they were pretty much exterminating people that were not armed, that were going against the government. Yeah.
And this was in?
This was in the Congo, in the Kasai province.
The Kasai province.
Yeah, so like when you watch the video, so you pretty much see like a Congolese soldiers going like through a forest, through near a village, like walking on beaten road, and suddenly they see people, like running around. They didn't have guns. They were just wearing clothes and some trees, or I don't know,
like camouflage.
Yeah, like not exactly camouflage, but
like improvised camouflage.
Yeah, kind of improvised camouflage with some leaves and things like that, and running around.
Oh my god!
And then the leader of that small group, that army, he just gave instructions to his soldiers to shoot and pretty much kill the people that were sitting there. So they exterminated them, and once they get closer, you actually notice that these people were not armed at all. They didn't have any guns, and many people wonder if that use of violence was really necessary to kind of deal with that problem.
These were the rebels doing this?
These were the Congolese soldiers.
The soldiers were doing this?
Yeah, so the soldiers were killing the people that I believe to be rebels.
Oh,
yeah.
And they weren't the people that were
so those rebels were not armed.
Wow.
Yes, they didn't have any guns. They were just kind of running around, and not really attacking or posing any little threat to the military. Yeah, and following that incident, so the UN sent a special mission to investigate the case, and that was also something that actually made a lot of noise on the internet because the people that were sent by the UN mission were also killed in the Kasai, so they went to investigate the killings, so and got into contact with the rebels, and there is I mean, and then those people from the mission disappeared for some time, and people were wondering where they were, and finally their bodies were discovered, and then later on a video actually came out showing how they were executed by supposed rebels.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So there's been a lot of things going on, obviously, like we've had many people fleeing the Kasai and fleeing the eastern part. And, many people might not know, but I think in the DR Congo, we've had more people running outside of the country. So more people running outside of the country as refugees, more than people in Syria and Iraq combined.
See, this is why it's an important problem that we need to address.
Yeah.
And there are even more internally displaced people as well.
Yeah, internally displaced people. Yeah, so we have people usually rushing to big to cities like Lubumbashi or Kinshasa, so those big cities, because after they run away from the war, so the only place, the places that kind of have kind of institutions that can kind of support them a little bit are those cities, because in other places they're not really certain if they can find like a safe environment, and if they will actually get to find a job to provide for themselves.
And when they actually get to these cities, I don't know if you actually know, but how likely is it for them to actually get a job and be able to settle down, live a normal life?
Yeah, so the job situation in my country in itself is kind of complicated because we don't really have special institutions or statistics that kind of measure how many people are unemployed or things like that. So many of the people, they kind of survive daily by doing their own kind of small business in a sense. So you have people selling coal, for instance, people selling vegetables, and people selling a bunch of different things to kind of get by their days. Yeah, so that's how many people coming, fleeing, coming from villages and other places that are less developed. That's kind of how they survive, and also poor people. Yeah, so there's no, like if we like strictly had to count people that are employed like in a service sector, there are not that many people. Also, like the unemployment rate, if we were to count like people that actually work real jobs, it will be very high, probably like above 70%, I think. Because most of the people survive by themselves, doing their own things.
You just figure out. You were saying something interesting, like actually a lot of people from Solomon, right? You were saying the same thing, like he has never seen homeless people that the way you see them in Berkeley back in. 1 second. I'm just gonna check this. Okay. Yeah. So, this is kind of a tangent, and I want to go back to the issue of refugees in Congo, but also that's a serious problem in America is homelessness and the way they get treated and the way they act. And I always thought, I was under the impression that that's sort of the cards that they were dealt. But it seems like there's a different narrative, the way they deal with their lives, or able to deal with their lives, under, at least in Mali and Lubumbashi and Congo.
Yeah, so I would say like generally like in Africa, I guess like because of the way we kind of developed, and also going back to our roots, we're usually we grew up like in communities, and usually for many people, so there are no homeless that are exactly related to economical problem. Like most of homeless, people become homeless maybe because they were kicked out of the house, by their parents who believed that they were possessed by demons or they had witchcraft and things like that. So a lot of kids get kicked out by their parents because of things like that, and some actually have parents that died, and so they end up in the street, or they ran from a war zone and came to the city, and coming there they do not really have a close family member to them, so they stay in the street in a sense. But the big difference between homelessness, I mean, in the United States and in the Congo, like if I may speak like for my country, is that people look a little bit less. I mean, they look less miserable when you go back in Africa, and I guess like this is because of the fact, the way they kind of deal with with the poverty, being in the street, and how they communicate with the people, and all the different things. And in many cases, like homeless, they still manage to find something to eat. They still manage, by doing some certain jobs, like maybe working in a mine, working into construction, helping people park their car, cleaning cars and other things. They still manage to kind of find some money, to kind of survive, and also keep themselves clean to a certain extension.
There's no government.
There is no government help, so we don't have like a welfare program or something like that. So, like I said, like most people in my country, they survive by themselves. So they do different kind of things just to survive daily. They do not earn as much. Like they earn very little per day, but with the amount that they earn, they try to keep themselves alive, paying for the children's school, paying for the house, and paying for many other things. Yeah. So many people actually, I would say, live daily. Not many people get to save money and get to do other things with it. But like when you compare, like in a level of how people actually look and how you see them, so there's a big difference in images. Like here, homeless, they seem like very beaten. They, I think they don't seem as approachable as in certain areas of Africa.
That image of being dangerous or drug addicts or criminals or alcoholics, that's not the case over.
Yeah, and usually a lot of the so when you see like a homeless that kind of look like homeless here in the way kind of they present themselves, at least the extreme cases that I've seen in Berkeley. So most of the time, most of those people back home, they will have like a mental issue, like a real serious mental issue that has gone, untreated. That's when you see that level of kind of, I don't know how you say that in English, but like just the way you see them, that it makes you feel really, really bad. Yeah, and we don't tend to see homeless that's above the age of 20. Usually they're pretty young. Like when you see homeless, like I said, like usually they'll be like kids that are really young, and that got kicked out of the houses because of some pastor saying that the kid was possessed, and that the kid was responsible for someone's death in the family, illness, poverty, and all those stuff. So people get kicked out of the houses because of that.
That's another very foreign concept to me, is the belief in witchcraft. And it's not just like a small group of people, it's a lot of, seemingly it's the majority of the country has this belief that witchcraft is real, and a lot of people have actually experienced those sort of things. Where does that come from? Is it religion? Is it?
I'm not really sure where it came from. Like, I'm not like I won't say like big believer. Like I'm somewhere like in the middle, but I feel like like the level of education might be behind the fact that some people don't really for everything that they don't understand they call it witchcraft. Like yeah. So I think that might be like the major problem. Like because people don't, they don't know about science, they don't know about technology, like maybe modern medicine and other kind of treatment and, technology that might be out there. So sometimes they try to find some weird explanation, to the thing that they're not understanding, So I feel that's part of the problem, like I think just like in general, the continent and the country, they need more education because in most families, where people actually get educated, we don't have a lot of those cases. Usually, it's a family that are kind of lower class and middle, sometimes that are usually affected by those kind of problems, and there is also the religious influence, church influence on the people. Because sometimes what happens is that you will go to a church, the pastor will be praying for you, and then he will say that he sees a problem in your family. There's a trouble, something disturbing the peace or the wealth, the well being of the family. And then after that, it's going to point to a person, who actually going to become a victim of that prophecy because the person get kicked out uh, without really being given any chance to, I don't know, to disprove the thing, if it can even be disproven. Yeah, so it's just a little bit weird. I just feel like education is something that can solve this problem, and also maybe some policies by the government to kind of limit, what some things that the church may say to people, because I feel like it's a little bit overboard for a church to tell someone that they have which kid who is only 5 years old, 6 years old.
Yes.
Yeah, and for people actually do that, I think that they have really wicked and disturbed mind, because for a father or a mother to abandon your son based on the assumption of a pastor, saying that the kids is affected by witchcraft, I think it's a little bit crazy in my opinion.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's unfortunate.
Mm-hmm.
How's the education improved, or maybe not, in the past few years?
I would say like from the few improvement that I've seen is that I know that public primary school, actually became free.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, since 2007 or something like that. After we've had our first election, so that was kind of a form of improvement,
That was
But
was that when Kabila first came to power, or no? That
no,
was,
after the first elections.
I see. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so pretty much after the 5 years of transition that we've had with him, after the death of his father. Yeah, so I would say that was kind of an improvement, but I wish they also did, improvements in such a ways that they maybe increase collaboration with foreign universities, and maybe provide scholarship for people back home who actually showcase like some kind of, uh, you know, um, intellectual. How would you say that in English? Like they showcase some kind of intelligence, not
Have more
intelligence,
exposure to those educated people, so that people can aspire to be
Mhm. Yeah.
like TED Talks that they have
Yeah.
here.
Yeah, so just get to have more people go outside so they can experience cultures from outside, and try to bring a little bit of that, maybe the work ethic, how school system work in other countries, see what works, the bus system, the government, and all those things. I think that by doing that it will really improve the way we operate in the country, because in a sense there's still a certain mindset, kind of keeping certain part of the country, from developing, and becoming better, because we've pretty much been in the same mindset, since the independence, it's all, people are not really willing, to put in the work, to have the country go forward. Even the work ethic at the workplace is not really, pushed. We don't really have, like when I came here, whether you're at school or you want to have a job on campus, you go through a series of different trainings, regarding sexual harassment, regarding, work ethics and all those things. But back home, we don't really talk much about those kind of things at the workplace. You just go, you get your job, and you get some training, but mostly related to how the business work, and things like that. And even just on the level of empowerment, like coming here, I noticed that when you go to a shop, the worker or the salesman, has some level of power to actually get to help you at the moment when you need help. But back home, it's usually only one person making a decision for the whole company. So an employee by himself. So if he was in a moment and subjected to a certain question that he wasn't able to answer. So he will need to always contact the upper management to provide him with the solution at that moment. So they're not given that kind of liberty to.
It's systematically
Yes.
slow.
Mm-hmm. Systematic slow. Yeah.
A lot of blocks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a lot of blocks. You know, it's very very slow in many ways, and kind of a little bit backward thinking. You know, the way things operate. You know, and even like in terms of management, like a lot of our system is not informatized, so we still rely like a lot of on paper. You know, which I believe is one of the reasons why corruption is at such a high level in the Congo, just because a lot of the things are not saved in computers. When you have a piece of paper, it's really easy to take it out or change information because there's no, there's no communication between maybe the different department by computer. It's a really ancient type of system, which has like a lot of maybe gaps, where money can escape, and money can be used, to do some things in the dark,
How much of it is digitized so far?
No,
if at all?
Not much, like professors at public schools, they're still paid mostly in cash, they don't have bank accounts.
Really?
Yeah, even a lot of the federal employees, same. And like I said, the different department of government, they don't really communicate by computers. Not many people are used to communicate by email, writing a report and doing all those things. So everything is written on paper most of the time. And because of that, a lot of information get lost. A lot of different things happen, and that's not good.
Yeah, it's not good at all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It makes it possible for a lot of...
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to call it anything. Let's move on because I don't want to make a statement on this.
No. Yeah, but if they could solve that problem, it might help, with corruption, and also to save, more of the money, maybe at the borders, when product come in, we can have like a better kind of inventory of what actually comes in and goes out, and just in terms of transparency, so we know what the government is actually doing with the money, that it's receiving.
So how much is the cell phone penetration in Congo in general, at least in the middle class?
I would say that cell phones are becoming, like more prominent, like in Africa, especially since Android phones are becoming, less expensive, they're more affordable, and people can get access to them. And even for the people, like people who have like really simple phones, because of the different problems, that we face in Africa. Like we don't have Wi-Fi everywhere, we don't have 4G. I think we're just starting to get 3G in some part of the country. So because of that, like a lot of the phone companies have started to improvise, to kind of, utilize, the resources that we have. So for example, we have some kind of, because people don't have bank accounts, some cell phone companies came up with some form of, I won't say cryptocurrency, but it's kind of working the same way. So you can have money that you put in your phone and it's kind of become your bank account. You can send money to family members. So you just need to go like to a small shop. Even when you don't have a smartphone, when you still have like those really old Nokia. So your number become like your debit number. And you get to use that to, receive and send money, to pay at some places. And people have been like really creative, about those things, because since we don't have, really fast internet, some people don't have apps, so people had to improvise to actually find the system that will work for everyone. Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard about this happening. Indonesia also has a large population of people using digital wallets. Because like a lot of people still don't have credit cards.
Yeah.
It's hard to get a credit score. I don't think there's a credit rating system that's as formally institutionalized as in the US. So they've used this, and it's actually helped grow their economy really, really, really fast. So I hope that's the case for Congo as well.
Yeah.
Like as as messed up as things are,
Mm-hmm.
it does look like there's a glimmer of hope.
Yeah.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
at least.
Yeah, I think like, with years passing, I think like the terrain in Africa, just in general, will start changing, just with time, even if there's no major kind of revolution happening. I feel like slowly as the old regime is going out, like new people will come up, with better ideas and maybe also be, care more about the people and actually get to do something that would actually help the continent, move forward, you know. Yeah, so I think that those things, are gonna be happening even if they're happening slowly.
Alright, we're gonna take a quick break. We'll be right back. Don't go anywhere.
Uh-huh.
This is Bare Minds talking about Congo.
Uh-huh.
I'm just gonna pause it really quick.
Yeah.
Alright, and we're back.
Oh.
Literally a 2-minute break. But we still do need to go back to where we left off before we went off on that tangent.
Mm-hmm.
So, the elections have been delayed for half a year.
Mm-hmm.
The most popular
Mm-hmm.
opposition party leader
Mm-hmm.
has passed away.
Mm-hmm.
There's uncertainty, instability
Mm-hmm.
rising up in the country. I'm not trying to sensationalize the problem,
Mm-hmm.
but how do you think Kabila would do if he were to be re-elected for a third year? Or don't answer that. What do you think Kabila ought to do, or any president ought to do?
In this situation that we're in right now?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I feel like the best thing for Kabila to do, I think, is to, get to organize the elections this year and get to have someone else, be our next president. Because I feel like without this, situation happening, we won't really be having like a real democracy situation. Because we've been having the same leader, and unless we actually have someone else coming up, and people actually getting used to the feeling of, democracy, having a change, it's gonna be really difficult.
What's it like when you go to vote? I don't.
Mm-hmm.
Well, when did you come to the U.S.?
I came to the U.S. in 2012, September 2012.
So you were still under 18, or you were just 18?
Yeah, I was 18. Yeah, getting close to 18 or something, or past 18, I think.
Have you been through the voting process?
Yeah. I've been through that, and
What's it like?
it's a system that is not perfect, of course, because like I said again, going back to technology, like a lot of the system is not informed, so we don't have computers, and a lot of the information is not digitized, So a lot of people, maybe they flee the war or they came from a certain region. People don't have birth certificate. They're not registered in the government system. The government doesn't really know what the true age is, and therefore it's also really easy to actually get to create people that do not exist because we don't have a database of the people, So that is kind of really problematic. Like when I went to do my registration, I don't remember being asked, about my birth certificate. They've never looked at it. They've never really done any kind of background search, to make sure that the information I provided was true. But then again, I guess that it's really hard, for certain region, because of the wars and things like that, to actually have documented people. Yeah.
And so none of these things are digitized, like the government database of people?
No, unless like you have a passport or something. Because if the information was also digitized, like if, like even when you have a driver's license, it doesn't mean that you can vote in my country. You need to have a specific ID that
is a voting ID.
Is a voting ID.
Oh.
And yeah, so I don't know what happened to the database that they had before. I don't know if people get updated into that database. So it's a little bit weird for me. I'm not really sure how that system works, because many people faked their age, many people faked their names. Some people registered themselves more than once. We had different kind of cases like that.
Yeah, and I'm sure people that don't even exist could be voting as well.
Yeah.
A lot of ways to tamper.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's always the case though, like with a developing nation.
Yeah.
it's just even when it's developed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's a very it's a very kind of complicated process. But just going through that, so the information they asked me, I had to provide fingerprints, my fingerprint, and like the fingerprint was not digitized, so I had to put my finger in the ink, and then put it on the paper, and then after that, only they would take a picture of me and type the information on the computer, and give me like a really simple paper, which is really it's easily washable. If you put it in a washing machine, it's gone. It's not like a solid card or something. It's pretty much like a paper with this plastic around it to preserve it. And it's something.
Do you have it on you?
I don't have it here.
Oh man.
Yeah, and I left it home. But yeah, but that's pretty much like how they look like. It's really, really basic, really easy to fake, and yeah.
Yeah, so I guess. I mean, I'm biased, and there's a reason I would say this, obviously,
Yeah.
but technology seems to be one of the big frontiers for Congo to develop and move forward, and not just catch up with the rest of the world, but to like actually be on level plane.
Yeah.
Economically.
Yeah, and like I said, I think it's an important component, for the country to start moving up, because without proper technology, like the different institution won't be able to communicate, properly. They won't be able to, kind of analyze, and follow what's actually going on, tracking people. I mean, not tracking people,
Tracking people.
not tracking people, but making sure that people actually exist. Like we have a database of people, and
It still sounds like
no, like here, like when you go
Like
to when you go to the DMV once,
yeah.
they're gonna have your information even next time when you go. You're in the system,
Right.
But for us, unless you get a passport, you're not exactly in the system.
How do you become eligible to get a passport? You have to be a certain type
You
of
have
person?
to apply, but even the passport is one of the most expensive passports in the world.
Really?
I believe we pay like $160 something to get a passport.
What?
Yeah, it's a pretty, pretty expensive process. So,
and how much freedom does that allow you to move around within Africa? All the other financial things.
You need visa to go to many countries. That's what I would say. Yeah. Even like within Africa, like when you want to go to neighboring countries, and things like that. So you will need visa for many places.
See, this is something that's new to me. I knew Congo and the US didn't have the best in terms of diplomatic relationships, but even within Africa, it's difficult to move around.
Yeah.
You've been to South Africa though, right?
Yeah, I've been there, but even for there, like you still need to get a visa.
Yeah.
And you need to renew it, a few times. I think my sisters, two of my sisters are studying there, and I think they renewed this the visa, like 2 times already, for studying there.
Wow.
And but like I haven't renewed my visa since I came here, so I think it's maybe even a little bit more complicated to be a student there than it is here. Yeah.
And so that's another thing, is that the people within Congo, specifically Lubumbashi, where it's the educated population, when they leave to study abroad, how many of them come back to become these government workers, to become the entrepreneurs, the scientists, to carry the country forward?
Or the people that left?
Yeah, because the incentive is not there. You'd have to be really altruistic, and even if you were like a prophet of some kind, it would be difficult, honestly.
Yeah. I feel like one of my friends and I were talking about this specific issue, today. It's like it's kind of ironic that when many of us are here, we talk about all the goods that we want to do for the country and things like that. And I'm pretty sure people that came before us, they probably also kind of did the same, but then when they go back home, like sometimes it makes me wonder, like how can you go in a country, like you go to study to Europe, you go study to the US, and other countries, in Asia, like, Korea, Taiwan, China, India, and then you go back home and you see all the problems that the country is facing, and instead of trying to change them and make your country look more like the countries that you visited, you just embrace the system that was already in place and keep doing the same thing that people have been doing since the independence, because the mentality right now is still like the mentality of the old regime, the same thing we had during the Mobutu administration, the same kind of thinking, people are really attached to power, and based on what you see, they're not really interested into the development or the betterment of the country. So, which kind of make me think, and also like my friend said it yesterday, we're like a little bit part of the problem, because for us, being in the US, like coming from my friend, and also I do agree with him, like for us, because of the fact that we kind of come in a sense from a privileged environment, a lot of the things that are happening in the country, I may complain about, and my friend may complain about, but in the end we're not affected as much as the people that are actually living in the country, or the poor people. The currency might go down, we might have like different fluctuations and inflations and things like that, but it won't exactly affect us as much as the other people. Like when we don't have electricity at home, we have I don't know how you call it, machine to have.
A generator.
Yeah, we have a generator to have the electricity back. We have a car to go pick up water at some places when there's no water. But for many people, they have to walk miles, they have to do something. So I feel like maybe that, certain people living in a certain bubble don't really understand, the difficulties that people actually have to live with every single day, and just going through that. So I don't know if that's, what also kind of part of the problem, is that we become a little bit complacent, and also kind of we're not as aggressive about changing the system, because in a certain sense, like some of us are still profiting from that system, So I think that's might also be part of the problem, and it will also take, a lot of change in mentality, from our part, to be able to actually make real change, because talking about the future, in a sense we are the future, because we're the ones that are studying here, outside of the country, seeing what's happening outside, the different innovations, how they're pushing, for students, to be the best of themselves, to be competitive in a healthy way, and all those different things. Like, we're the one who get to see that. You are the one who get to go to, renowned companies, and get to see, the work ethic and how people get to work into those companies. So I feel like we have a really massive responsibility, to kind of bring those values home, but just also to get back to the point that you said, some people, maybe might be discouraged, by the fact that certain majors are not really relevant back home. Like, some people feel that, okay, if I do computer science in the US, for example, and then go back in the Congo, you might end up fixing radios for the rest of your life. But yeah, but then I feel like even from that thinking, I feel like because people are not, are not maybe thinking outside of the box, because they're expecting the institutions to be ready for them when they're the one that actually, in a sense, I'm not saying that they're forced to go do that, but they kind of have a certain responsibility to go and make the problem that they see in the field and actually make it become better. Like when they see that computer science or that field is not taken seriously, why not bring that innovation that the people need? Because when you look at countries like Rwanda and certain countries like Cameroon, they're starting to have incubators, they're actually pushing technology forward. And those people that are doing that are native from that country, they went outside and they saw things that other people were doing, and they brought those philosophies back home. And I think that maybe that's something that is prevalent with, a lot of English countries. I mean, countries that were colonized by England, a lot of those English countries in terms of innovation, and also in terms of philosophy, they kind of behave differently from countries that were colonized by France, because when you look a lot of the French countries, they still have certain problems that English countries don't have. Even when you talk about banking system, it's really hard for one to borrow money in the French system. By French system, I mean like African French. Like when you go borrow money, usually you get like a really high rate. Above 10%, and it's really impossible. For many people to actually get to reimburse when you borrow from those banks. So, at the end, those banks just end up not lending money to any person. Yeah, but it's a really complicated situation.
I really hope that
Mm-hmm.
there's a possibility that more people
Mm-hmm.
that get to see the world outside
Mm-hmm.
and get that education, the privileged people,
Yeah.
the people in a sense that are more comfortable
Mm-hmm.
to come back and help the country for the next generations to come, because
Mm-hmm.
without those people
Yeah, it's gonna be the same kind of things going on. The same people gonna be in power, because what can happen at the end of the day is that the people in power today, they're gonna be pushing the children. The children gonna take over, and if the children also have the same mentality as their fathers, we're gonna keep going into the same kind of system. Because not to criticize the opposition and other things, happening. Like when you look, for me, like when I was analyzing a little bit of the politics, when I was looking at the UDPS, for instance, it was kind of hilarious for me, or kind of funny in my mind, that when you have a political party, it's kind of become like an empire, And it's the case in many political parties, whether we're talking about the majority or the opposition. You have a person in the party, the presidents of the party, and therefore it means that they have to run for president. They don't have that system where you actually get to elect a front runner. For those parties, you're president, you're the one who has to run all the time. And what happens usually is that when they retire or when they die, the kids take over. Without elections, without considering the people that have been in the party for so many years. And I feel that also is kind of making a lot of the political parties like really weak, because they don't have like a driving philosophy. They mostly, I think that opposition in the country just mean like being opposed to everything. They don't actually have a core philosophy of what they stand for. Here, even if sometimes Democrat and Republican can kind of be similar in certain sense, but there is a certain differences in the policies. The way they view certain issues. Like the size of the government. The way the government should be handled. And all those things. Those are the platforms of discussions here in France and other countries. But back home, we don't really have, like, you don't really know what someone stands for. Like when you hear UDPS, Tshisekedi, but you don't know what's the core message. When you hear the majorité présidentielle, you hear the party of Kyungwa Kumwansa, it's mostly the face that you see and not so much the message. So there is a lot of partisans that are attached to the image of the leader instead of the message or the core, ideology of the party.
and it's just contained within the family.
Yeah, it is contained within the family. The uncles, all those things. So that's why things have been kind of the same for so many years. Because Mobutu was there, he left, and then now it's kind of the same thing all over. I'm not saying that we have the same kind of dictatorship, but the same mentality is still there. People are in the government are mostly dealing with politics because they want a position, and not so much because they want to help the people. A lot of the things is about position. Like even when you look right now, the ministers, our government got bigger than it was because we have more ministers now, and all this is because people want power, and usually when they get power, they won't talk as much because now they're in a position where they get, a revenue, they get money, and they get to have some kind of power. And that's kind of what kind of keep, the the same thing, you know, going on forever, you know, for a very long
Once
time.
you get that little taste of
Yeah.
it takes a
Yeah.
powerful person to not go crazy from the power. I think that's a good place to end.
Yeah.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, no worries, man.